Recording is on.
All right, so we'll be continuing our discussion on our next 2 points of the Desiderata Extinctionati, and we'll start off with never defile the sacred. So I'll leave it off to whoever wants to take this on first. I think this is a good one.
Mm-hmm. We're going to define what sacred means first.
Good luck with that. I don't bother. I raised it, but I don't think I defined it. Good luck with that. I don't know what you're going to say for defining the sacred.
Well, I was going to approach it the other way, which was, like the beginning of Lao Tzu, where he says, the way that can be spoken of is not the true way, something to that effect. That is whatever sacred is, if it can be spoken, that's not it.
Yeah,
that's exactly it.
I don't know. Is there a kind of power?
Yeah.
Because if you're asking people what the sacred is, you've got to give an answer in words. It's an answer from the alien cortex. You're only going to get answers of what's sacred to the alien cortex.
Exactly.
And the only thing
I'm not promulgating this. I'm just saying it to start the discussion.
Yeah, no, I think that you bang on, and I think the only thing sacred to the alien cortex is the alien cortex. So it's kind of sort of also has it's also against ego in a lot of ways. But yeah, it is really that Zen thing of they talk about speaking with foul breath, and they often if somebody starts speaking big truths or deep truths, then they say they'll shut them up and say don't talk with foul breath. There's a Zen story of this guy who, it has the form of a lot of the Zen stories, but it's this guy that comes to see some master, I think like Gosan or something like that, and they come and find him in a temple, and they say no, he's not in the temple, he's out in the fields, and then they find him in the fields, and they say to him, what is the essence of Zen? And they start answering all these very deep questions because he's probably the only person in Japan that can answer them. And the guy just stops, mowing the hay with his sickle and says, this sickle is very sharp. It cost me only 3 yuan down in the market. He'll only talk trivia. He'll only talk, just the most banal thing. He just refuses to engage in philosophical discussion. And the reason is, the reason is simple. It's because the whole of Zen is to get out of your alien cortex. So these people make a journey all over Japan for the sake of their alien cortex. It's pure ego.
Yeah.
And so he won't engage their ego. He won't basically play ball. Because otherwise you can play forever. They could do a little objection. And you play this game of intellectualism in the alien cortex, and you never get out of the alien cortex. The only way he can get them out of the alien cortex is make them ask a question, or even make them get angry. So if he talks absolute trivia and just refuses to engage in philosophy, then at some stage they're going to get angry. And I think that's how the story actually ended, is the guys were completely angry that they'd come all over Japan just to talk to this great thing, and he refused to do anything but talk shop and and I mean, it's Zen stories, once you understand the form of them, they're kind of easy to invent. But I don't think the story went this way, but you could easily embellish it by saying, the guys, get completely angry, and then they say, why should I come all over Japan to talk to a great master when I could have, had the same conversation with fishwife down in the market? And you say, that's what you should have done. You should have had this conversation, and then you would be enlightened.
Well, I suppose he's going to do anything he can to just break them out of their their normal state of mind for a minute. So that's what I was thinking, that rather than asking what the sacred is, you know, break people out of their brains, out of their minds somehow, just for a moment.
Yeah, all these things are actually the same. Each one of these desiderata are actually quite similar. They're not the various aspects of the thing that it's
doing that.
I was actually, when I raised this one, I was kind of actually talking against the previous desiderata, and the previous desiderata is exactly that. It's cheapening things, talking about love and things like, basically just cheapening them by talking about them loosely. And so, you know, I think that's very dangerous. It's a kind of path to hell when people start bandying about sacred things. You know.
I think it ties exactly also to what we talked about 2 or 3 weeks ago about end all religions, dogma, customs. It ties into this because talking about the sacred is talking about something that you don't talk about, talking about the unspoken is not really but yes, open the time to being taking a strong atheist position and maybe taking the piss out of a lot of dogmas is more tied to that, and that story illustrates that marvelously. It's just
yeah. So when I actually wrote this one up, the commentary I put in it when I suggested it was exactly that, and I said, but you know, I've always been a militant atheist, and I'm quite happy that everybody should be a militant atheist, because all religion is a false idol. So if anybody talks about God, just shoot it down. So there's no such thing, because there isn't. It's an invention. So
exactly.
of course there is something there. Nobody understands what the hell's going on in the universe, or what we are, what consciousness is. There is something there, but you can't go start talking about it as God or something before you know it there's a religion and somebody's saying, oh, that's Allah, and they start putting attributes on it. And the minute as Gary was saying, the minute you voice it, since it's beyond words and even conception, really, you can only intuit. And if you do intuit it, it's instantly a lie if then you go and define it in words, and if you start debating the meaning of those words. So yeah, I take the position of a militant atheist and shoot down anybody's religion. And then, late nights after, watching the stars and having a few glasses of wine, then there are moments when, basically you can, have a conversation with people where you can admit, yeah, there is God. But it's a thing of silence, right? You can experience it in silence. You can't experience it in speech. So there are magic moments where two people can actually, know there is a God. But then if anybody says anything after that, it should be like a Zen person and slap them.
Yeah.
There was because instantly they're cheapening it and they're starting to lie, So it's the truth of the matter is lost as soon as you start talking about it. So I think we'd be better off as a planet if people were militantly intolerant of religion, and we all, knew the divine secret that there is a God, but you don't fucking talk about it. And especially the fact that God is us, but not our alien cortex. That's a usurper. That's a reflection of our consciousness, and it's our consciousness that's really God. So anyway, on all that speech, I've just broken the rule horribly, but you kind of have to explain it.
Yeah, that's why I referred to that opening line of that book, because right at the beginning of the book, he does the same thing by speaking of what can't be spoken of. Can I just ask? A lot of people are just so completely disconnected from the sacred and just don't even suspect the existence of it. is there any validity in just trying to indicate to them that there's something else? Sorry, I'm expressing this badly, but I mean the role of religion just up to the point of trying to get people curious that there might be something other than just what's going on in their mind, and don't lead them any further. Like you're just talking a moment ago about sitting around with drinking some wine, looking up at the stars or something. Yeah, just the role of religion that stopped there with that. Just get them to the edge of being able to leave their normal self behind. Don't give them a lecture about the next bit. Just leave it up to them from that point on. To just
for our purposes, yeah. In terms of enlightenment, you can't take people to enlightenment, but you can take them to the brink.
Yeah.
But you have to shock people out of religion, because religion is so twisted that if you say anything about religion or make any arguments or try and get
all the defense comes up,
or no, the opposite, confirmation. So the real danger is people say, oh yeah, I know all about the ego, or I know all about God, or and then you say, no, you don't. Oh yeah, I do. And basically, you can never talk to an entrenched ego. Basically, it's almost like a demon inside somebody, and it's completely taken over the person and taken over their mind, and it answers for them. So then you can never lead them to any kind of truth, enlightenment.
Yeah. What about
they're not even at home?
Yeah, we'll see when they're that far gone. What about, for instance, the limited and judicial use of something psychedelic to sort of just completely to give them a window into a completely different perspective, just as a, I think. Look,
I'm against it, and the reason is it's the same reason as the Zen Buddhists and stuff are. Basically, it's just taking you to the movies. So the problem is that people make an association. So if you don't want to do what I think the priests were doing at Göbekli Tepe, and that's give people entheogens, because otherwise they associate that experience or you or the drug with what they experience. So you become the gateway. Basically, there's an intercessor immediately. They think that you only have access to that realm with the drug. And so once you're there, basically with an intercessor, you automatically cutting them off from themselves. That's basically a journey back to yourself. But if you show it to them in a mirror, then they see it in the mirror and they desire it in the mirror, and they can't turn it around to see themselves. So it's really part of Plato's allegory of the cave, right? And really the allegory.
What about it? Yeah.
It's
what
really,
about it in the more in traditional societies where they do that sometimes? The context is different, or do you still think it's the same?
Yeah, it's very different. It's kind of the opposite. So what the conclusion I've come to from all of these things is that you're making all these things in your own brain, all the entheogens and stuff that give you these experiences. And the experiences, by the way, are considered a hindrance normally. But those experiences are, basically people, they muck you because they delay people. People want to repeat the experience instead of move on. So it's all about staying in the present moment. But people hanker after the experience, after the past. So if anybody has any one of these experiences naturally, I came to the conclusion that it is our own brains. Our own brains have, make DMT and all these, LSD and stuff. I just read an article yesterday about how they just, for the first time, discovered how LSD works. But it's a, all these things are made naturally in your brain, and that's what gives you, access to the doors of perception, like Aldous Huxley said. If you take mescaline and stuff, you're doing exactly what your natural hormones do, but you've done it out of a bottle or out of a syringe or out of some, vapor or smoke or something like that. If you do it externally, your body cuts back. Basically, the hormones and neurons
Yes,
and
it's a feedback.
these things, yeah, they all basically self-regulating. So they reach homeostasis and they say, oh, you've got enough of this chemical, I don't need to make it. So if you take DMT on a regular basis, or LSD, you get on a hedonic treadmill and you need to take more and more because your body's saying, I can take a holiday, it's being made for me. So so what you need to do is the opposite.
What I was trying to get to was like, no, it was just to use maybe in some circumstances and for some people who haven't sort of had a endogenous experience like that, to just use it once, just to sort of jolt them out of their normal mindset. It's just to have a glimpse of God, so to speak, and then that's it. Just so that
like a job.
And I know it sounds corny, but that might be the thing to get them started on their spiritual path, so to speak. Whereas before that, they were completely clueless.
I agree with that, but you have to be very, very careful. One of the best ways to do it is to not let them know. So what they would do, particularly this happened to Timothy Leary, actually.
Are we talking about something with the waterworks?
No, I don't know about that one. No, what happened to Timothy Leary is something which they'll do generally to you if you come with your left brain, Western alien cortex up into the mountains. I think he went.
I was intrigued.
No, let me tell you.
I think it was Alan.
Alan Watts?
Oh, I'm sorry. I think it was Alan Watts.
Alan Watts.
Because he wasn't in favour of that.
Yeah, but no, he took. No, well, that's what makes me think it was Timothy Leary, because basically Timothy Leary took like a whole load of LSD, that's right. A frigging lot. And then he went up into the mountains. One of these famous guys, I can't remember who it was. Not the Maharishi. It was, but anyway, what these guys will do to you if you do that, he offered the guy LSD because, he's got an LSD ego. That's his connection to God. He's very into it. So, Timothy Leary is LSD. And so straight away, the guru guy sees this is what the game is. And so he wants to see, how does this guy react to my drug LSD? So it's a kind of a test for the guru.
Yeah.
So the guru basically took all the LSD, basically a handful, enough to send a horse to the moon. And then like Timothy Leary was absolutely gobsmacked because the guy did nothing. The guy is
nothing.
The gurus didn't bat an eyelid, right? He didn't change his
didn't bat an eyelid. Yeah.
So then, but then, if you read other accounts of that, and particularly one of the guru's right-hand man, he said basically what the guy did was most of these gurus are pretty slick magicians and charlatans, and so most of these gurus are like charlatans and stuff, and they can do magic tricks. And so what the guy said was, what the guru guy did was he just palmed them and pretended to eat them. So he put Timothy Leary out. So Timothy Leary was hugely impressed that he could take all of that. But what happened next is even more interesting. The next guys to come like backpacking up the mountain, to see the guy, also Westerners. Then they asked him. Then they were all kind of mystics and stuff. And they said, can you give us some, not puja, I can't remember what you call it, basically some little a little thing, a little token. In India, they always want like a little piece of dust or a little bit of your hair
Yeah,
or
offering.
something.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I can't remember what it's called. It's not puja. It's like, oh, anyway. But they ask for that, and so they asked for a little bit of ash from the Guru's fire. Now, what they're going to do with that is then they're going to take it like it's LSD. What he did was, he still had all the LSD in his hand. He basically, I think they were tablets of maybe mescaline, maybe, but he crushed them all in his hand. And when he gave a little bit of the ash from the fire to those other guys, then he put loads of LSD in it.
I put some in.
And the reason was that you can imagine when those guys took the bus down the mountain, then they would be like on an acid trip, like, and they would say, I went to the Guru, he gave me a little ash out of his fire, and like it sent me on a trip that I've never, wouldn't do, and he'll go to, and so that's how the guys work. But
Yeah.
you see,
no, what I was thinking.
One I saw that was they were exposing the Guru as a charlatan, but he wasn't really being a charlatan. That is the way the guys work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What I was just wanted to just say, I don't know whether it was Alan Watts, but he wasn't happy with the way Leary was going anyway. But he seemed to think there was some value perhaps in just doing this once, just for that sort of intimation of something else, and I don't know if it was him, somebody had the phrase, that when you've finished the phone call, you hang it up, like, in other words, you don't keep using this, you just use it for to get the message, and once you've got the message, you stop, kind of thing. And for people in Western society who are very much smothered and covered from any experience outside their own ego, to just crack that artificially for them once, give them a glimpse of whatever, and then but don't go back to it, don't depend on it, as you're just saying. I'm not trying. That's why I'm saying just once. I'm not putting this forward because I've never done it and I don't want to.
No, just once is fine. But yeah, basically you have to have somebody that knows what they're doing, and so there's lots to say about this. The thing is that basically there's an industry, there's a cottage industry of all these charlatans, opening up your chakra, and then. Like Gail Bradbrook did this. She goes and has ayahuasca in South America and comes back, using it. It basically the guys are priests. So if you say this, then people that have done it get very defensive. Now there's your first clue that something's terribly wrong with this experience, because if they get defensive about it, it means that it's an egotistical thing. They're hanging on to it. They've claimed all this stuff. It's all a horrendous mess. I tell you, Gail Bradbrook would be better off not going to South America.
Not going, I see what you mean,
Now the other thing is, you can just say, okay, well, I'll just do it the once. I'll open my mouth on it so I can see it, and then carry on. Well, you can fuck yourself up really badly. Now, what happens if you have this fantastic experience, and then you can't get back? Whatever you do, you go and sit there and you meditate, and you're pretty much screwed, because then you've basically been introduced. Basically, the gates have been opened, and then you can't get back. You're pretty much screwed. You well, maybe I should just always just drugs to get there, or and basically.
But that can happen to you. That can happen to you. But all right, that can happen to you naturally, though.
Yes.
That you can have that glimpse and not be able to go back to it.
Yes. And so, but when it happens naturally, at least it was done naturally, and the way back is natural. But in all of these things, the big danger is then it becomes makya. That's what they call makya, and that's basically a devil's cage.
Well,
you basically keep on. It stops your development, right?
Yeah. yeah.
And it's basically because you keep on hankering after that experience, and it becomes an obstacle,
Right.
rather than.
I think there's something else to in all these things. There's cultural context. The cultural context is enormous, and we forget about, like, what are those guys from inner city going to South America to the forest to try something in a completely, I don't know, even here in Europe, you know, and there is psychedelics everywhere. People had their own mushrooms, their own little gates to perception, but I kind of look at it as a kind of extended tourism at the moment, and a business, and best-selling books, and I find it extremely I'm suspicious.
At best, but there are millions of fake gurus out there that are using it as a tool. So some of them find it naturally, and start finding that basically by making themselves priests and intermediaries to the experience, it gives them control over people. So there again, like, for example, Manson was a guy who did that on his own. He found that he had a big effect on people, and just, you know, basically introducing especially young girls to drugs, it gave them complete power over them. And so that's the game a lot of these gurus are in. That's why you see so many scandals around these, you know, kind of cults and that, is because they turn into sex scandals, because the guys find that you can completely dominate and take somebody over, and then basically they use it to get, you know, sex and control and all their money. And basically, there are more of those by far, 99%. Compared to 1%. So it's better off to just bypass the whole thing and not do the drugs.
My point is, it's a solitary thing and a personal thing and an individual thing, but as soon as it starts to get organized, and as soon as it starts to become ritualized and monetized and everything, I think I just got my red lights that go on and say, no, don't go there.
You can take it as read that a real guru wouldn't do that, and if he did, if he or she did, you wouldn't know it. So you can induce one of these states in somebody, and they wouldn't know if it was done, you know, by psychedelics or basically mind altering substances, or if it was done naturally. So you know, in especially in the context of a group of people, you can get to these altered states of consciousness quite naturally. But if somebody just, you know, spiked a punch or something, and that would be okay. You know, if somebody went and just dumped a whole LSD in the water supply of the entire world, it would all do us a lot of good. But the context, the motivation, and the thing behind it is crucially important. And the reason is, what I said in one of my videos is, if you do have an enlightened experience, the trajectory you have coming out is determined by the trajectory going in. It's almost like going through a black hole or a singularity or something. And so if you come, the ship you come in on is kind of like the ship you come out on. So if you come in on a, you know, Christian esoteric, you know, basically, that's the formula that you use to get there. When you come out, it will have all the context. Everything you experience will be, you will have to interpret that way, the way that you came in the same context, basically, and unravel it in the same way. So you have to unravel it in a Christian way. So the more vanilla that you can make the experience, the less trouble you will have with bias and all these pitfalls later with identifying it with Christianity or a certain sect or a certain drug or a certain person. All these attachments are huge obstacles afterwards. So the less of those you have going in, the less pegs you have to hang the experience on, the better off you'll be on the other side. And so that's also what it's about.
But don't you think sometimes all those substances, all those mushrooms, all those chemicals, all those things that were developed through different cultures and forests and countries were a quest for humans to find again what they had lost, and what you were talking about that was happening to them naturally. I don't know. It's just an idea, but there's so much out there in the world and in nature that can reproduce things that we have in our body. The cannabinoids are in our brain. The DMT is in our brain. Nearly everything, and some herbs. I'm doing this because I'm looking at my herbs outside, and I see there's so many properties that I think I wonder if people hadn't lost this enlightenment, this doors to perception, and that they looked for it and they found it and it become ritualized. And do we have to do maybe the travel backwards and dissociate from trying to find it in nature and find it in ourselves again? If you know what I mean? Do you know?
Yeah, so look at the shamans and say hunter-gatherers, what they were doing when they took these substances. So if you compare it now to a Westerner that basically goes on a spiritual journey and goes and it's completely upside down. They were going on trips to connect to the ancestors. They had a whole different mythology around what they were doing and an understanding of what they were doing. And I'll tell you one thing, you can only guess what they were doing, but you know damn well it wasn't egotistical. They weren't doing it because I want to be a better person. It wasn't an I and a me. And now you watch one person that talks about their experiences, if they go and do ayahuasca in South America or they do any of those things, all I, me, and my experience, and it's like that's what the shamans were originally trying to get out of is perception into the wider perception. And these people are doing the exact opposite. They're going in, they're doing a jerking off in their own box. They basically it's a journey that's in the wrong direction. So it's me and impersonal and getting inside, and very much now, because we're talking about defile the sacred, it's very much a defiling of the sacred, because they're saying I got in touch with it. It's like, who? Define this I that got in touch with what? And then straight away you can see it's a fucking fraud.
Hasn't?
Yeah. And I think
so. How do you?
Because you use a chemical media, you automatically are putting in motion the forces of logic and the alien cortex and stuff, because you are automatically going into that mode of thinking. It's not happening. It's just you are creating it.
It's my experience. Yeah. Here, all right then. For the modern person, how do you create the context for them? The shaman, those people in those more down-to-earth societies could create a context and a setting for this, which was appropriate. But the Western world, the way we live at the moment is so disconnected and fragmented. We don't seem to have a context for anything that's sane.
Yeah. So now this is a very good topic to go over. So one of the things to do it is basically we need to reinterpret and reinvent the language for lost children like us, so you can even understand what we're doing. But one of the things that I've done is to say, do it in terms of Chronos and Kairos. So getting out of Chronos is one way. But in terms of the Hindus, what they said was really the three Guna. Now, the Guna are kind of qualities of the universe. They thought that, in essence, it's almost like the standard model of the universe. And in some rather spooky ways, it does rather resemble modern physics in a loose way. But anyway, the three gunas, Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas. So what they said was basically, Tamas is, you might as well, in the Western mind, consider as gravity. Or the strong nuclear force, the stuff that binds things together and holds, stuff together. Then Rajas is energy, as in E equals MC squared. And it's the thing that basically keeps things dynamic and in motion, and it's basically F equals MAM or Newtonian stuff. So really we think in terms of, very much in the materialistic Western world, we think in terms of Tamas and Rajas. So basically, form and energy. So, basically E equals MC squared is kind of the guna. It's kind of saying Rajas is E, M is kind of mass, and then basically there's the last one, which is Sattva. Now, Sattva is kind of hard for us to understand, but you can imagine it as kind of a wonderful feeling, like Freud talked about an oceanic feeling that he could never understand, but was told to him about a religious feeling. It's often like, like fishermen, in the evening when it's calm and tranquil and the sun is setting and you can see a crane flying over a clear sky and the water's golden, and then you have these moments of pure tranquility. And Gary, I think you've had one, right? And then
that's I just reminded of it.
So those moments are what they would say was pure sattva. Now, if you want to experience enlightenment, then they say you have to come out of tamas, because it binds you. It makes you lethargic. You just go back to old habits and watch TV and have a beer, and you don't do all the things that you need to do to get enlightened. Then Rajas is what the Western world is beset by. It's basically running around. It's business as usual, busyness. I mean, everybody's buzzing around doing
busyness.
Rajas is the worst enemy the Western world has. It's just, and that's what happened when COVID came in. Is Rajas stopped for a little moment, and for a brief time, then people, did get tastes of sattva, because the roads were clean and empty and stuff. And we don't have the vocabulary to even talk about it. So people say,
Sattva, yes, like purity,
everybody says, they hamstrung for even the vocabulary to mention it. So then people say, it was so nice in lockdown and there was no pollution and basically got to go. They don't have the word sattva, and they should be able to say, well, if we stop all the rajas, then it's not awful. You see, a lot of people doing rajas think they're doing it because they think they'll descend into tamas. But if you have to stop rajas to get a sense of peace and purity, and that's sattva. So sattva in physics, if you're loosely in terms of Western physics, it's light. So we made a kind of a cock-up, and Einstein made us do it, and Max Planck and all other guys, but we associate light and energy, and that's probably a big mistake. So we have a fucked up conception in the West about what constitutes energy in terms of rajas and what constitutes in terms of light. And so, but even then, they even say in Hinduism that light also will bind you. And the reason why it will bind you too is because of the thing we were talking about with the drugs. You will like the light. People get attached to the light. You see what you can Buddhist monks, they 10 a penny and they have this aura of tranquility and this golden thing, and they almost have a little cloud around their head. And then you get these junkies, they call them bliss junkies. And they want to be in the presence of these guys so they can have a little bit of their bliss. And it's all rather fake. You can always chip away at it, and you can make the guys angry. You can throw them into rajas. And then that shows that basically they're just hanging on. They're just faking it. They can kind of, like doing, basically pull-ups on an arm. They can pull themselves up and hold them there, but they're not really there. They're really straining to stay there. And then they can, a lot of people, a lot of the time, but they fall off the wagon. But people get very angry if you get between them and some of these characters, because you're getting in between them and their drug supply. So they, I've criticized people like the Dalai Lama and had Buddhists go nuts. And the reason for it is that you're getting in between them and their bliss supply. So if I can come and say hello, Peter. All chasps. This is Peter Marshall.
Hello.
Hi.
Nice to meet you.
Hiya.
Hello.
Most of them have seen the video interview. Yeah. So, but you want to? Yeah. But I think we've probably got a little while longer, and I'll join you.
You know, also touches that too in the way, in the concept of the way, and the image of the light is very much the Tao Te Ching too. There's a lot of his poems. It's touching on the same thing. And we're going back to the sacred, the way. We're talking about Lao Tzu in the Tao Te Ching and the place of the little light, the way. I don't know if you've read that. I love it. So I read a lot of that now and again. Yeah.
Yeah, but don't forget that the light's also a trap, right? The light's almost the worst trap. Yeah.
Of course, he talks about the little small. He doesn't talk about. He talks about the little small light that shines. You know, he doesn't talk about anything enlightenment and no.
No, but ultimately we're talking about freedom and ultimate freedom. And basically what they say is the Guna will all bind you. All three of them will bind you. But
yeah.
Sri Ramakrishna used to tell this parable and say that, well, he tells a story about three robbers waylay a devotee or something like that in the forest. One of them binds him to a tree. Then one of them takes all his money and his goods. And then one of them comes back. One of the three robbers comes back later, frees him, and leads him out of the forest. And so he tells that story, and then everybody goes, "What the fuck was that about?" And then, somebody later he interpreted for him and said, "The three robbers are the three guna. So Tamas binds your hands and feet, so you can't move. You'll never get out of the forest. You're basically, you'll be a slave. Rajas takes your time and your essence. It diverts you. Basically, TikTok and all these, everything going on in people's normal use. What we're doing here in digital media is better than average use. But most people are just watching cats and stuff. That's Rajas. And then basically what that's doing is all these scumbags from Elon Musk to Larry Page and that, they're all stealing your time and your money. And then if you can find peace and enlightenment, hopefully a bit more like what this call might be doing for you, is a little bit of Sattva, then that is a robber that can unbind you and help you see your way out of the forest. You still have to leave that third robber. That robber's still not your friend. The only way you'll be really free of the forest and the robbers is if you leave that third one behind. And in some ways, that's the hardest to do because that one is your friend. So it's the subtlest one and the most devious one too, because it seems like that's the one that led you out of the forest and stuff. And so people barely notice that they're still shackled with this robber. It's the worst robber, in fact. The worst one. How did that sound?
I think when Ramana Maharshi was dying, and the people who were in the ashram or whatever it was were saying they were obviously there's a lot of them who were just attached to him, and they were freaked out because they thought, well, once this guy dies, what are we going to do? We're stuck. He's our plainly they were leaning on him. But I think he just said something like, well, I'm not going anywhere really, but it's a case of whether people clung on to that as keeping him alive in their mind, or whether they could see that what was continuing wasn't him personally, but was what they'd seen within themselves that was going to stay.
Yeah, I got to remonstrate a bit with Ramana Maharshi on that one, because I would have said to them, like, you're not losing me, you're losing your drug supply. I would have been a bit harsher
Yeah,
He,
yeah.
he
Bit
he was
blunter. Yeah, blunter.
too nice. And that would have woken them up a
Yeah.
bit. He kind of, I
Yeah.
think, weaseled out a little
He
bit. I
gave him
think,
a soft answer.
yeah, he played
Yeah.
that one a bit too soft. I think Ramana Maharshi got a
Yeah.
bit soft in his old age. He should have played it a bit harder, in my
So
view. But
Yeah, no, I see your point.
there's the big notion of attachment there.
yeah,
And
he should have
Yeah,
freed
yeah.
them at his from attachment. And
Well,
I
well, see, a lot of
there that he kept them on a string with his memory and stuff, and
Yeah.
that was a bit of a bastard move.
Yeah.
it goes back to the psychedelic thing too. Like there's again this attachment.
I guess
This
that same thing. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
To go back to the beginning, to the question of never defile the sacred, then does that simply mean what you've been talking about? That defiling the sacred is dealing with all these intermediaries and pretenders and so-called helpers, and that is what defiling the sacred is, because it's really blocking other people from their own.
Yeah, it's idolatry.
Yeah, idolatry and
for it. So by talking about it, you substitute words for what you're talking about it. And
Yes.
then, if you go
words.
you can see like Sri Ramakrishna and stuff has idols everywhere, and they're substituting an idol because they can't stand the fact that he's gone. And you see, that's the danger with Ramana Maharshi. Then is people will keep photographs and the memory, and they'll keep the memory alive.
Yeah.
You can go to Ramakrishna, you can go to Ramana Maharshi, you can go to Ankarula there. And that's what they're doing. The bastards will ask you. When you go, they ask you.
That's right, yeah.
If you go to Arantala now, they will ask you, what do you know about Ramana Maharshi? And you got to say, yeah, I read this book, and all this stuff. And then they'll like
they've all got the the picture.
There you go.
Wow.
Did you get that, Arantala? Did you get that, Arantala?
I'm not like that.
You got that, Arantala, didn't you? But you see what they're doing is they're not so bad. I mean, Ramana Maharshi was a really enlightened guy. So basically, it's not as bad as the regular thing, but they're still doing what I just wrote about as like exit at the gift shop. So when they when they ask you all these questions, they're like, "Are you worthy enough to come into our temple to Sri Bhagawan?" And then if you are, then they like share a bit of the smack with you, which is you sit in the presence. You basically have darshan. You sit in the presence, and then like they like, oh yeah, his spook's around here, and basically there's a lot of sattva. You get a little hit, and then they like exit at the gift shop, and then you buy a fucking picture. And what it is, it's common and garden religion. And what they're doing is they're setting themselves up as an intermediary between you and Ramana Maharshi. And what Ramana Maharshi was trying to say is, I'll never leave you because we're the same self. But he left the door a little bit
I guess that's right.
open.
There was a higher meaning to what he said for those who could understand it.
Yeah, but he wimped up. He left enough room for them to have a religion. If he was more enlightened, he would have slammed those guys' fingers in the door with them, so that they wouldn't have any option to have a religion.
I want to see that.
I think he's probably got about 1,000 lives as a fox or something, because he weakened at the end there, because he left the door open for religion, which was a big no-no. But I think he had a soft heart, and that's why he did it.
When did he die? When
was
it?
Early?
Yeah.
Yep.
When?
Early or mid 1950s. About early 1950s or mid.
Yeah.
Wikipedia says 1950.
Yeah.
50, is it? Yeah.
I think, right. I was thinking more of Sri Ramakrishna. I think Sri Ramakrishna died about 1903. But yeah, the pictures of Ramana Maharshi reading, the Times and stuff, which is very strange.
Yeah.
To see a black and white picture, because he's really of the old school, really old school, like the
Yeah.
Acharyas and stuff. So it's kind of a shock to see him like sitting there reading the Times.
I think sometimes when you look close,
we've taken a serious divergence from the normal fare. I mean, like we're exposing ourselves to terrible new agey types, aren't we?
Yeah.
I hope nobody watches this video, because otherwise they're going to hang us for this.
I know. Well,
should we, do you want to move on to the ripeness is all then, or?
Yeah, I mean,
in a way, we're still dealing with it.
I'm just kidding. I think it's kind of nice for people to see that we do have some other aspects other than taking the piss out of exile.
Yeah.
I think it's related to, we're so busy with civilization, making a living, going round and round, that it's part of what you were talking about, that it's so hard to be quiet and go in and just explore more of what's out there, what we really are, because we're caged, we're wage slaves, we're busy entertaining ourselves, we're like children playing games on the internet. So I don't know if well, it's kind of all related to, if the system is brought down, then people will have more time to delve into the what is out there, what is inside us.
Well, that's what happened. That's the great gift of COVID for a while.
Yes.
But look how difficult it is to do without some kind of guidance, because most people were going stir crazy. So what we do in the West is we lapse between Tamas and Rajas. So we run around doing absolute batshit crazy stuff, which is just basically flattening the planet, and then we collapse into lazy boy, and then we cage our mind with all the bullshit on TV.
Yes.
Then we go to bed and we don't really rest, because you can only rest in Sattva. So we have no Sattva. We just have this kind of bleeding energy hiatus, which we call sleeping. Then we get and force ourselves into Rajas, which then makes the pendulum swing back to Tamas. And that's how our lives go. And so if you can just break that cycle, then you've got a chance. But what happens is, if you break it, like with COVID, then people get like caged lions, and they want to run around, and they think that lockdown was the inhuman, because they don't, it's okay. So you don't really want to cage them. You want to free them from the clock, and that's the biggest gift. But I tried to get people to understand that, and that war on time, and the thing about Chronos and Kairos, and that it's really beyond people, because they're so distracted by Rajas. People say, like, they say, like, can you give me the TLDR on this? I haven't got fucking time to sit down and watch a video about fucking time. So, like, well, how do you reach people that haven't got time to listen to you tell them they need to slow down?
I know. I read through all your writings into introduction. I think it's 30 pages at the Sirius Institute, and you were saying that it's kind of a filtering mechanism to make it so long, probably to reach people who have no short attention spans.
Yeah, you don't want them, because they muddy the waters, and they you see, a lot of people, it's difficult because people want to get rid of their ego. And so they bring their ego to you from somebody like who's talking like me, which I shouldn't do. But anybody who talks like me, they'll bring their ego and they'll say, will you get this demon out of me? That's what they want. But what they do is they bring their ego to you and start making it perform. So they want immediately. They won't let you take the ego out of it. They kind of want it out and don't want it out. So it's really tragic thing because, you know, Freeman, the guy that went around in the lobotomobile giving people lobotomies, what he said he was doing mass lobotomies, you know, thousands at a time. He did about 2,000 all in all, but he went around in a van doing quickie lobotomies, and people lined up to get them done. The reason why they lined up for them was because he said he was freeing them from the burden of consciousness. There are all these people that are misfits, and they can see too much, and it's a burden on them. And they would like say, "Oh, it's quick relief." You know, basically, it's basically quick permanent relief. Basically, you will not suffer anymore. You will not suffer the burden of awareness of your existence. You'll just be a robot. And people lined up to do that. And so that's really what people are doing when they come to a guru or somebody talking like me, is they're saying, please give me a lobotomy. I'm in pain. Then as soon as you start the process, then they get into narcissism and their narcissistic supply, and then, I'm getting the tension. Are you operating on me? And then you start this big old dance, and they don't really want to get lobotomized at all. Then basically you give them a little hit of what they really want, and that's their narcissistic supply. So you've got to get rid of those people because they basically they have no desire to get rid of their alien cortex or their ego, but they bring you the ego saying, please rid me of this. And so it's kind of the equivalent would be you come to Freeman in his lobotomobile, say, oh, please lobotomize me. As soon as he gets out of his tool, say, oh, this is sexy, you want to play Dr. Doctor? And you say, well, no, I don't want to play Dr. Doctor. Either you fuck off or otherwise have the lobotomy. Ooh, sexy talk. And you go into the... So you have to get rid of people like that because you're giving them narcissistic supply, and they're just wasting your time, their time.
Yeah.
This is a funny old game, isn't it?
I'm just wondering, once years ago, there was a televised thing about the Mahabharata, the Hindu epic. And I always remember one section of it where this boy wanted to be apprenticed to a master to learn swordsmanship, I think it was. And the master refused and said, no, I don't want you. I don't want a student. So the boy went away into the forest and set up a effigy of the master and practiced in front of this effigy and became completely accomplished in the use of his sword or his weapon, whatever it was, all by himself. But when the master found out, the master said, well, now you have to pay the price for my lessons, and the price is I want the thumb of your right hand. And he had to cut off his own thumb with the sword. But I never quite figured out what the moral of the story was, but the part of it that intrigues me just relates to what you just said, because where you're these people come and depend upon the guru for their little bit of whatever they get from it, narcissistic supply. But you know, that at least that first part of that story related to you can do it by yourself. You don't need the guru.
This is a devious one. So just a point of order there. Like A said, it was Ram Dass that did that palming of the hand thing. It was
really
in the first that I forgot that was Ram Dass. Anyway, so that story about the master. So So, okay, now there are a couple of things. Like I say, you should be your own guru. Now there's a business. Basically, there's a guru business, and these guys basically make their living out of being masters. So what the guy was saying is by cutting your thumb off, you no longer can be a swordsman. So it's basically saying that if you don't come through the proper channel, me, then basically I'm going to be, and the price is that you can't be a swordsman. So it's a bit of advertising. It's saying, yeah, you can't go
See
through the
what you're
back door.
saying. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think it's abominable.
It's
Because what I would have done is if I was that student, I would have basically challenged him, said, yeah, if I'm a well-trained thing, you can get the thumb yourself.
You
So
fight.
have at it. Yeah. So like, here's my thumb.
yeah.
Come and
Fight
get
me.
it. But you're kind of screwed, because if you get my thumb, you haven't been a very good master as an effigy, have you? So therefore, I don't owe you a